So I'm here with Jill. She plays Maria on the tour with me in The Sound of Music. And we're going to talk a little bit about your journey vocally with Maria.
It's been a journey.
Yeah. So we were talking about like what you've learned is helpful as you're warming up for this role. It's a big one.
Yeah, and for me, doing this role over the course of a few years of my life with some gaps in between and coming back to Maria, I've noticed that one, my voice has changed because I've aged and I'm maturing and I've done other roles and have, you're always, the instrument is always changing. So
Totally.
For me, I wanted to come at this year on the international being like, I think I want to sing her a little more classical, a little leaning into that Julie Andrews vocal timbre a bit. Before, it was not contemporary, but like there was just a slightly different Maria.
Maybe a little more brightness.
Yeah, I think brightness would be a good way to describe it. A little ping and played a lot of Disney princesses in my time, so maybe a little
that
Disney.
came through.
Maybe a little bit. Sometimes it still does, which is okay.
Totally, that's part of you.
But yeah, so we were just talking the other day about getting ready for a show, and I take a long time getting ready for the show, but I never want to warm up too early in the day, but I'll do some like a lot of checking in here and there with just like and just humming lightly throughout the day and just checking in all the registers of where I sit. And also speaking on my voice, because sometimes I'll talk down here and I'm like, why are we doing that, Jill? But for me, often what I had been doing was I was super like rigid on I'm checking in on these 3 songs in my show. And then I noticed that I was like, that's not serving me anymore. Or I was noticing weird places of tension, or I wasn't warming up my full range in the way that was going to set me up for success.
Right.
But I was kind of getting bored of singing the show songs and then going and doing the show. So I was like, I gotta switch this up.
Habits start to come in when you're singing the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, and I would notice that my voice would be like, oh, here comes this part that you warmed up at, and I wouldn't be singing the full song in my warm-up. So it was just like, this isn't working. This isn't serving me. So I started singing other repertoire. Right now I've been singing a lot of Music Man.
Love. And
doing like various keys in singing those songs, so that I can like build up and like I'll do some rich, warm, mixy, lowerish notes because Maria does have such a span of vocal range, both speaking and vocally singing. So for me, I'll do a wide range of things, and I'll build up to my higher notes, and I'll check above my high notes for Maria too, because I don't want to just stop at like, here's as high as I sing in the show.
Ceiling.
I want to keep like expanding upon that range. So I was singing a lot of Goodnight My Someone. I was singing My White Knight, Till There Was You, and just leaning into similar rep, but not the same show, just in the style of, to help with that.
Right, and I think you're bringing up something really interesting here. A lot of time we think of practice as like just sitting in front of a piano and doing scales. Then we think that that's the only way to warm up or do any sort of practice.
Yeah.
But I think if we practice more the way that we're going to sing in the show,
emotion behind it.
Really, it ends up being more useful, more like clearly applicable to what you're doing.
Yeah, and also like let's talk about the face muscles. Like, if I'm just doing like, I do want to do my ah vowels and checking my placement or this or that, but for me, like the chewiness of Maria from all the speaking that I do on stage, 9 times out of 10, that's where I find myself going. By the end of the week, I'm like, I'm a little tired. I'm a little fatigued from the amount of talking that I do in the show.
Absolutely.
Or if it's a dry venue, it can all go into play. And so for me, really warming up my whole face too, and
articulators.
Yes, and allowing myself to sing a full song versus just vocal warm-ups or lip trills or anything like that. It does help to place lyrics and a song and allowing that full warm-up, emoting vocally, color, richness, whatever emphasis you want to put on the vocals.
Absolutely.
It's really important for me.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned that it's not just like warming up before the show starts, that there might be some things that you do in the middle of the show, too.
I do. And more, I guess, like checking in on the instrument and seeing where we're at to navigate the show. For whatever reasons that may come into play. Oftentimes, Maria, my show starts with singing Sound of Music on a bridge.
Iconic song.
We all know it. And it's stressful because of that. But, you know, then later on, that sits more in like my mix range. So I try to do a lot of pre-show, like talking and speaking in on my voice in that way. That sits in that warm, rich area. And then when I come back out later for my favorite things with Mother Abbess, we have dialogue leading into it, and that song builds beautifully to be the higher harmonies that we sing later on. But then for me it's pretty well paced at the very beginning of the show. It's like, okay, check this off the list, making sure I'm hydrating backstage, doing whatever I need to do. Once I've arrived at Lonely Goatherd, I've sung quite a few songs and have not shut up on stage for a little while. So I'm backstage doing a costume change, getting into the Maria bathrobe and nightgown, and I took from one of your videos on the Voice Collective warm-ups, and I was like, I do a lot of yodeling. And I noticed you had done, you'll know the proper terminology for this, but when you go, what did you call that?
Yeah, it's just a laryngeal register shift.
A what?
A yodel for colloquial terms.
Yes, I love it. So because I yodel in the show, and that song I'll sing in my mix. Sometimes there's a little more chesty aspect, chest voice to it, but oftentimes it's in my mix and it's very charactery. And I make goat sounds. I don't always just sing it. I make goat sounds on stage. And but every now and then I do have those high notes, so I will be backstage just checking in on that, and it's been a game changer.
Yeah, making sure that you have that freedom even like just before a scene, just as a check-in. I think we don't talk about that enough, like warm up as check-in, not just getting my voice ready for the show, but also being like, where am I today? Am I a little bit tired? Am I dehydrated? Do I need to get some water? Am I feeling great? And I've done what I need to do and I can just go. You know?
And that's huge. And sometimes it's okay, no, I can take a few minutes to like check in with the kiddos backstage, or is it I am being a little more quiet backstage to just conserve and reset, or also sometimes it's just a head game too. Like, and now this is when I need to like add this layer to the Maria cake. Now we're now we're decorating the cake. I don't know what it is, but there's just certain things that allow me, right, and now we have to add this added layer into our vocal technique and to keep the show consistent, so that when I do back off from a lot, I'm not singing as heavily in the show at certain aspects, that it is well paced throughout, so that by the act 2, it's when I do start singing a little bit more, it's not as jump back in. It's just a consistent, we're in a good place and we're able to just navigate the show and pace it along the way.
Totally. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks,
this was
Cassi.
awesome.
Yeah.
You should listen to her. She's right.
You should listen to her. She's right. Thank God for Cassi.